Good evening, Shortcuts. This is Stephen here. This is the list for Wednesday, December 6th. One of the last lists of the year, I think maybe the second last I'll do this year before we have a break over the Christmas period. This is the classic rock and pop list, and it features first time appearance of one of my all-time favorite records. I cannot wait to talk to you about it. But I'm going to start this week's first video with a discussion about this band, the Pogues. As many of you may well be aware, Shane MacGowan, the lead singer of the Pogues, passed away this week at the age of 65. Which is simultaneously young and old for that man. There are many an interviewer back in the day who thought he wouldn't live past 1986, and here he is in 2023. A few weeks before Christmas, and all of us almost mark the beginning of the Christmas season with the first time you hear Fairy Tale of New York, which is on this incredible record. Now, this record isn't for sale, but I just want to talk about it. This, I think, is the Pogues' masterpiece record. If I Should Fall from Grace with God. Third record, after the Elvis Costello produced absolute cacophony of Rum, Sodomy, and the Lash. If I Should Fall from Grace of God was the culmination, I think, of the raucous beauty of the punk, Irish, and maudlin mix. He had this extraordinary ability to craft a melody that the musicians in the band could break your heart around with a mixture of tin whistle and mandolin and a driving beat. I mean, was he a great singer? I guess yes, in some respects. I mean, if you think about this album, one of my favourite Pogue songs is Thousands Are Sailing, which was written by the guitarist in the band, Philip Chevron, and openly gay punk guy, was in a band called the Radiators. And rumour has it, and I suspect this is true, that he wasn't sure how to bring a song to Shane MacGowan. When Shane MacGowan was bringing them Fairy Tale of New York, or Turkish Song of the Damned, or Bottle of Smoke, or The Lullaby of London, how do you bring Shane MacGowan a song? Well, what you do when you've got a genius in the band is you elevate. And Philip Chevron brought Shane Thousands Are Sailing across the Western Ocean, the greatest song about emigration ever. It is the most beautiful thing, and Shane MacGowan sings it, and every time I listen to it, it tears me up. It is just magnificent, and every single line has a meaning. Or you go to side 2, the broad, majestic Shannon, of course, the major river in Ireland, and they conjure this feeling of longing. It's this weird thing, because there was, Shane MacGowan wasn't born in Ireland; he was born in England, but somehow he embraced. I mean, rumor has it he changed his accent. I mean, it's extraordinary stuff. But this record is utterly wonderful. It's not just one of the greatest Irish records ever made. It's one of the greatest records ever made, full stop. It's wonderful. If you don't know it, seek it out. I love it. R.I.P. Shane. And interestingly, I then thought about the lead-off record that's going to be on the sales list that'll go out at 9 p.m. Sydney time on Wednesday. And Shane MacGowan was a singular talent. Um, my father was a Pogues fan. I don't think there's ever I don't think there was anyone in Ireland who wasn't a Pogues fan. When he was on Top of the Pops singing the Irish Rover with the Dubliners, everyone was a foot taller. The pride was incredible. It was amazing watching Shane and Ronnie Drew. It was, yeah, legendary stuff. Um, my dad passed away a few years ago, and I found myself, it was during the pandemic, and I couldn't go home for the funeral, and that hurt a lot. And I ended up listening to a lot of music, and this album that I'm about to show you, um, it had always been one of my all-time favorite albums, but a particular song on this album, and the album's just called Bobby Charles. And the song that I'm talking about is I Must Be in a Good Place Now. And I was reflecting on my dad and the fact that I couldn't be home. But we'd lost him a long time previously to the disease that is dementia, Alzheimer's. And I think the title of that song, it just gave me some comfort. I must be in a good place now. And part of the reason this song kind of caught me so much is that Bobby Charles describes the beauty of going fishing and seeing a butterfly and the clouds and just being in this silent, beautiful place. And that was my dad. He was a fisherman. He was not happier than if he packed the car at 5:30 a.m. and drove to some river that only he would know, in some pool that only he would have thought about. He may have tied his own tie or his own fly, and he'd quite happily spend the day there in his own company, maybe not encounter a single fish and come back happy. I think that's his happy place. And so, why is this record so meaningful? Well, Bobby Charles was a prodigy. At 14 years of age, he was writing his own songs. See You Later, Alligator was written by Bobby Charles, became a hit by Bill Haley and the Comets. But by the time of the early 70s, he moved to Woodstock. This album was recorded in the studios in Woodstock, and he made friends with the band. So Robbie Robertson, who passed away earlier this year as well, and Levon Helm and Rick Danko and all of those guys, one of the greatest musicians of all time. And the band are his backing band on this record. So on the back here, you'll see the producers are Bobby Charles and Rick Danko and John Simon. But the musicians, Bobby Charles, Rick Danko, Levon Helm, Garth Hudson, Richard Manuel. Now, Robbie Robertson isn't listed here, but he is pictured in photographs from the time. And there is guitar music on this record that sounds suspiciously like Robbie Robertson. Also, Mac Rebennack, who you might know better as Dr. John, or the likes of John Till, who was the slide guitar player on Neil Young's touring band. I mean, this record had everyone. And one of my favorite credits, it says, all musical arrangements homemade. And why does that matter? It's because the way the record's mixed is that you often cannot tell where each instrument is. It's just a sound. And it's really organic. Think of a record, the perfect record to listen to when you're sat around a campfire. And this is this record. It opens up with Street People, I told you about. Street People almost sounds like Bill Withers. He has a beautiful timbre in his voice. He's not a million miles away from Bill Withers. But here he is, obviously a different colour to to Bill Withers, but man, I love this record. The only problem with this record is that the Japanese pressing, the only pressing, is the best copy of this record you can get. And therefore, it is extremely expensive. And so this will be north of $100. But that's because it cost me $100. But every time I see it, I've seen it once in 2 years. I'm like, I have to have it. The only other copy I know is the one that's on my shelf. I love it. Even the dog against the tree. Look at that, man. Love this record. Please explore it. It's an absolute delight. So how do you follow that? Well, I think you have to follow that with something hometown and bluesy. And the record I've decided to follow it up with is the second record by ZZ Top, Rio Grande Mud. You know, the record they did before Tres Hombre, and the first that they recorded in Texas, their home state. Of course, they named it after the river that runs through that state. But it is exactly how you expect it to be. Opens up with Francine. In the first 30 seconds, you hear one of the most obvious yet amazing blues rock riffs you'll ever hear, and it is like that for about 34 minutes, and it is so underrated and so great. And the good thing about these Japanese first presses that's on the original London label is it sounds bloody awesome, and this copy is pristine. I promise you, if I didn't know, it's as close to mint as you'll ever see, and it's great. Rio Grande Mud, ZZ Top, and not that expensive. It'll be around $50. I mean, a lot of times ZZ Top records, or Japanese ZZ Top records, are super expensive. But I got the guys in Shibuya have given me some really good prices coming into Christmas. Another example. This is $50 as well. This is the Japanese first press of Thin Lizzy's fourth album, Nightlife. Now, those of you who have been to my house will know that every so often I will just say, listen to this. And often it is any Japanese pressing of a Thin Lizzy record. They are so good. Honestly, you know, I've had Aussie pressings, I've had UK pressings. Everyone was telling me the UK pressings of Thin Lizzy are the best. I had the UK press of this record and of Jailbreak and of Vagabonds of the Western World, which is my personal favourite Thin Lizzy record. None of them are as good as the Japanese versions. And the beauty of Nightlife, this is their fourth album. It's the first where they were a quartet. The first three records, they were a trio with Eric Bell on guitar. And by this point, Eric Bell has left, and they've got Brian Robertson and Scott Dorham on guitars. So they've got dual guitars, and of course Phil Lynott on bass. And Nightlife is the closest they ever came to being a soul band. There are songs on Nightlife that almost could be it's like a mixture of Tom Waits and Otis Redding, and mellow, melodic. I mean, Phil Lynott is such an underrated singer. Bobby Gillespie, the lead singer of Primal Scream, and obviously a bit of a legend in the UK music scene. He raves about Thin Lizzy, and he had this line way back in the day that I read in NME where he said that Phil Lynott could sing him into bed. And he is great. And this record has their greatest ballad. And the Thin Lizzy were awesome at ballads, but Still in Love with You is their best. Even though on this record it's an odd duet between two voices, but it's just wonderful. It's a brilliant record. I'm going to race through a few kind of classics now. One of the records that I've had an immense amount of feedback over the years is this. It's the Japanese mono pressing of Are You Experienced? I only get it rarely because it's often ludicrously expensive. And so, for those of you who aren't aware of how this works, the shop that I work with in Shibuya, I set them a budget, and I don't know what comes other than you can make requests, and some of you have made requests, but they're, if they come, they come. But the box itself, I often don't know what's in it, and I'm always pleasantly surprised when I see this record, because I've said to them, I don't want the stereo version because the stereo version isn't as good. I only want the mono version, and now I have a properly priced, really nice copy of the mono version. I think this one's from '76. It's in really nice condition. The sleeve is a strong VG++, yeah. And the record itself, I played it earlier. It's great. The reason the mono is so impressive is because it's so singular and loud. It is a beast of a record, and this is the way to listen to it. It's the copy I've got on my shelf. All right, I've got a second album, and then a bit of punk and some pop. Another band that I've had really positive feedback on over the years in terms of sound quality, because one of the club members, Nick, who lives locally to me here, he sent me a note on, I think it was on Saturday, and he said, which Japanese press just sound great? And this is one that I could easily have put on the list. This is Lynyrd Skynyrd's second record, Second Helping. Ronnie Van Zant on vocals, and obviously incredible guitar players in the band. But this was the record, I think, where the singular Lynyrd Skynyrd sound kind of appeared. And of course, opens up with Sweet Home Alabama, which could well be their singular tune. I said, there's one other that's pretty strong as well for obvious reasons. But it is a great song, and quite the riposte to Mr. Neil Young. Background vocals on that song being Mary Clayton, who is famous for being the background vocalist on "Gimme Shelter" by the Rolling Stones. It's a nice little factoid for you all. But another song on here that I really, really like is on the middle side 2, After Swamp Music, which is exactly what it says in the tin, and just before Call Me the Breeze, which could well be the best song on the album, but it's called The Needle and the Spoon. And it is a song about an obvious topic that is also one that Neil Young sang himself about on The Needle and the Damage Done. And so there are interesting linkages between the two. Talking about the needle and the damage done, what about this? Sid Vicious, his, I think, only album. Look at that back sleeve. It's kind of unnerving, isn't it? With the bottle just there. And the lock around his neck. It's quite something. The scars on his chest. What a troubled person. This is the Japanese, I think it's the first press of Sid Sings by Sid Vicious. It's a singular piece of work, that's for sure. The needle and the damage done, my friends. Now I've got 2 presses of Beatles records that I am going to rave about very quickly. This series, the EAS series from 1976, is, in terms of bang for buck, the best series of Beatles releases. And the side two of the collection of Beatles oldies, the side two of this, which is a mixture of mono and stereo songs, is as good a side of any of their first 6 records. Do not sleep on this. It's great. And I've never had it with the Obi before. And it's really reasonably priced. Do not sleep on that. But this is the one I'm going to rave about. The 1976 White Album press of this record. Now, I'm lucky in that I have the Mobile Fidelity 1981 or 1981 and 1982 original from the analog tapes pressing of that record. And I've always said, because I'm lucky enough to have those Mobile Fidelity records, that I will not collect any other additional Beatles records except for that. If you look at the Discogs reviews, you will see a number of people who say this is better than my Mobile Fidelity pressing. And you know what? I hate to admit it, but I think they're right. I think it is better. Better balanced. The mids are more prominent. And the good thing about when you have really strong mids on the Beatles records is you really get to hear George Harrison's guitar. And so it really is something. And the harmonies are outrageous. And the acoustic songs, Julia and Blackbird, are, on really high quality vinyl. They're sublime. So this record, very highly recommended. Man, look at the time. I'm going to be quick. Another 1967 record. Actually, White Album 68, but 67. Smiley Smile, my personal favorite Beach Boys album. It's super hard to find. I don't get it very often. It has Heroes and Villains on it. It has Good Vibrations on it. It also has some of the weirdest, most arcane, most WTF music you will ever hear. And if the rumours are correct, that on Vegetables you can hear Paul McCartney chewing a carrot, that would not surprise me, because the Beach Boys were bonkers on this album. At the time it was an abject failure, but it's been reappraised and is now absolutely in the canon of 60s records that you must hear before you die. It's absolutely mad. Now, I'm not going to claim that you want to hear this record before you die, but I've just got such a great copy of this record. I just had to show it off. Rock and Roll Over by... Oops. Oh, I'm going to pick the little one out. Because look at it. Look at that logo. By the... Do I say the mighty Kiss? I don't know what I say about Kiss, other than I find them pretty unlistenable. But this copy is stellar. Oh my God. If I didn't know, I mean, so as I tell people all the time who come to see me here, 3 things you do when you're checking a record. You look, obviously, under strong light for marks. There are none. You look on the spindle hole. Can you see marks? You don't see any. That's a pretty good sign. And is it flat? Oh, man, this record is as close to mint as you will ever see. It is so good. Anyway, and then finally, very conscious of time, I have Judas Priest's 4th and 5th records. The 2 records that are often cited in the top kind of 3 or 4 of their catalogue. You have Stay in Class and you have Killing Machine. Both genuine classics of that new wave British heavy metal, particularly Stay in Class. But Killing Machine has its moments as well. All of those are really reasonably priced, other than Bobby Char's, but that is what it is. The rest of them, for what they are really good. So, any questions, anything you want to know more about, ping me in the usual way. Price list will go out 9 p.m. Sydney time on Wednesday. If you lasted this long, thank you all as always. Hope you found something interesting. And we're going to talk about Dolly on the next list.